Hey guys, tonight we drift into the golden hush of the desert, where camel caravans sway beneath starlit skies and the sand hums with ancient stories. You're wrapped in a threadbare wool blanket, dust clinging to your lashes, the scent of dry earth and lingering frankincense threading through the air like memory. A wind whispers, tugging at the canvas flaps of your tent, and somewhere in the dark, a camel lets out a long, dramatic sigh, as if it too is tired of walking. Welcome to the quiet life of the spice route. It's not glamorous, unless you consider heat stroke and sand rash high fashion, but it is beautiful in the strangest ways. You're here now, in the heart of trade and survival, where every grain of spice comes with a 1,000-mile backstory and at least one minor scorpion encounter. You're going to be here a while. You'll hike blistering trails, haggle over cinnamon like your life depends on it, which it often does, and sleep beside people who snore like dying lutes. Oh, and one reality check before we get too cozy: you probably wouldn't survive a week of this. But that's okay, because tonight you don't have to. You just have to listen. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The wind picks up again, sifting sand across your blanket. Your boots are beside you, half buried in the dunes, and your water skin makes that satisfying slosh as you shift. It's late. The caravan's asleep, but you're still wide-eyed, the stars too loud to ignore. Above you, constellations sharpen against the velvet sky. Orion stretches lazily over your shoulder, the Pleiades blinking like campfire sparks. The desert breathes, and you breathe with it. You'd think the desert would be quiet, but it's alive with sounds. The soft hiss of wind brushing dunes into new shapes, the lazy clink of camel bells, the deep snore of the caravan leader who swears he doesn't snore. You are hundreds of miles from the nearest city, and yet, somehow, it doesn't feel lonely. This is the nightlife of the spice route. No neon signs, just fireflies and flickering torches. No late-night diners, just a chunk of dry cheese and some fig paste smeared on flatbread. And your company? Well, let's just say you've met more interesting people here than at your average office party. There's Fatima, who once traded silk for a falcon and still thinks it was a good deal. There's Yusuf, who swears he saw a ghost camel 3 nights ago, though no one else did. And there's you, blinking sand from your eyes and wondering how in the world you got talked into this. You roll over on your mat. The sand under your blanket is only mildly bumpy now that your hips have gone numb. You can hear the last crackle of firewood as the campfire dwindles into soft coals. Somewhere far off, a hyena laughs, or coughs. It's honestly hard to tell. Your thoughts begin to meander, just like the caravan's route. You remember this morning, starting before dawn. You were barely awake, cramming dried apricots in your mouth, while camels loaded up on bales of cinnamon and dusty blue indigo wrapped in waxed goat hides. The camels didn't care that it was early. They glared at you with their long-lashed eyes and made a noise like a growling espresso machine. One of them, yours apparently, tried to eat your robe. You named him Soggy. You walked half the day next to Soggy, occasionally negotiating your place in the world with him. He does not believe in personal space. You, being from the 21st century, absolutely do. But Soggy wins every time. By midday, the heat curls around you like a heavy wool cloak. You drape a damp scarf over your head and squint against the light. The sand turns white, almost blinding, and your boots squeak with every gritty step. Occasionally, you spot ancient wheel ruts etched into the desert floor, remnants of older caravans, older lives, now erased but for those shallow scars in the dust. At the last rest stop, there was a small outcrop of stones, flat and cracked from sun, scattered with bleached animal bones. You rested there while the camels drank muddy water from a shallow spring. The traders shared dates and traded rumors. Someone said a new Roman governor was taxing everything west of Petra. Someone else claimed they'd seen snow once. No one believed that guy. The sun dips low and the sky bleeds orange. You watch the shadows stretch, and for a moment it looks like the camels have giraffe legs. You realize with some dismay that your arms now match the color of the clay bowl you ate lunch from. You may never be pale again. You may also never get this fine grit out of your ears. Still, there's something about this life. The rhythm, the calm. You can feel the ancientness of it. How the dunes have watched generations pass. How the stars have seen it all. It's hard not to feel small out here, in a good way. Night comes fast once the sun dips. The temperature plummets and you wrap your blanket tighter. The wind sounds like it's humming to itself. You share one last flatbread with Fatima, who offers a dried lime as dessert. You thank her and try not to look horrified. It's pungent. You chew anyway. Soggy groans as he lies down beside the other camels, legs folding like a complicated table. One of them is snoring already, sounding suspiciously like your little cousin when he has a cold. You lie back and watch the stars. You remember what one of the older traders said earlier that day as he picked date seeds from his beard. The spice route isn't a path, it's a rhythm, a pulse. You don't follow it, you fall into it. He was either very wise or very dehydrated. Historians still argue whether these desert trade routes were unified systems or just overlapping zigzags of chaotic barter. Some say they were controlled by mighty empires. Others argue they were held together more by camel spit and traveler stubbornness. One fringe theory even claims some of the earliest maps were made not by humans, but based on the migration paths of desert animals. Though, let's just say that hasn't made it into the textbooks yet. As you sink deeper into your mat, your muscles sore, but your heart oddly full, you realize something simple. This world, with all its dust and toil, still feels alive, timeless, like the silence between camel steps is echoing across centuries. The fire has gone cold now. The last voice has faded into sleep. The wind is softer. The sand has settled. Somewhere, a lizard scurries under a rock, looking for warmth. Somewhere else, a small, ancient pot is buried just beneath the dunes, waiting to be found again. And you, stilled in the present, caught in a web of scent, starlight, and silence, are finally letting go of today. Your eyes grow heavy. Soggy snorts. You smile. Tomorrow, you'll walk again. But tonight, you just drift.
You wake up with a snout in your face. It's moist, a little warm, and accompanied by the unmistakable aroma of half-digested cactus. You blink blearily into the massive eyes of your camel, Soggy, who is far too pleased to be awake. He's chewing something that might be a shrub, might be your sandal. It's hard to tell anymore. The sun hasn't cleared the horizon yet, but the sky is lightening to that soft, pale gold that means brace yourself. The desert doesn't gently rise in temperature, it slams upward like someone flipping on an oven. And today, like every day on the spice route, you and your camel will start moving long before it gets intolerable. You sit up, dust the sleep from your eyes, and stretch until your spine makes camel-adjacent noises. Around you, the caravan stirs. Blankets roll, fires are stoked with dried camel dung, yes, that's fuel now, and groggy voices mutter over tepid tea and flatbread stiff enough to double as a weapon. You gear up. Today, you're walking beside the star of the show, the camel. These odd, grumbling beasts are the engines of the desert world. Without them, there is no trade, no frankincense or pepper or silk slouching westward into thirsty cities. You tighten the saddle straps, balancing heavy sacks of dried fruit and dyed wool, and glance again at Soggy. He is not majestic. His fur is patchy, His ears twitch constantly, and one tooth pokes out sideways like it missed the orientation memo. But here's the thing, he's a miracle. Camels can go a week or more without water. Their feet are like thick rubber snowshoes that won't sink into sand. Their nostrils close, their eyelashes form curtains, and their humps? Well, contrary to childhood lore, they don't store water. They store fat, which camels burn slowly like a living survival kit. One mainstream historical fact many forget, the domestication of camels was a game changer for global trade. It happened somewhere around 1200 BCE, give or take a century depending on which historian you annoy. Before that, the desert was essentially a hard nope zone for trade. Camels turned it into a bustling highway of grunts, bells, and poop. You mount up awkwardly. It's not graceful. No one looks cool climbing a camel. You basically have to do an exaggerated squat, hold on to a wooden knob like your dignity depends on it, and hope your camel doesn't decide to sneeze on you mid-rise. Soggy grunts, rises in 2 jerky lurches, and suddenly you're swaying several feet above the earth, like a very dusty king. The caravan sets off. Dozens of camels in a line, packs swaying, bells jingling in odd harmony. The rhythm is hypnotic. Step, sway, creak. Step, sway, grunt. Camels are moody. They hum, snort, groan, and occasionally shriek for reasons known only to themselves. They sit when they shouldn't. They walk when you're trying to sit. They're also surprisingly affectionate, in the way that toddlers with poor boundaries are. You reach a stretch of sand so flat and bright, it looks like glass. Heat rises in ghostly waves. You squint ahead and think you see movement. Maybe a rider, maybe a trick of light. Camels don't seem to care. They plod forward as though the world will bend to their will. Historians still argue whether single-humped dromedaries or the stockier two-humped Bactrians were more efficient for trade. Some claim dromedaries were better suited for the heat, while Bactrians handled the cold of Central Asia. Others say most caravans used a mix, creating the kind of biological logistical puzzle that modern shipping companies would envy. What no one debates is the camel's role in building the ancient economy. These were not backup animals, they were essential. While donkeys broke down and horses demanded water every few hours, camels just kept going. Slowly, grumpily, but reliably.
There's even a fringe theory that suggests early camel drivers developed personal songs for their animals, long, tuneless hums designed to calm the beasts and keep a rhythmic pace. Some archaeologists think these camel lullabies influenced later chanting styles found in desert communities. Whether that's true or just the result of too many hours in the sun, who knows, but it sounds nice. Your own camel has a rhythm to him. Step, grunt, chew. Step, grunt, spit. You learn to read his mood by his ears. Forward means curious. Sideways means annoyed. Flat back means prepare for a tantrum. You pass a skeleton, bleached white, rib cage rising like wind-carved sculpture. Probably another camel. You nod silently. Soggy huffs. The sky above is searing blue now, and your skin feels like it's being slow roasted. You wrap your robe tighter, shade your face with your scarf, and sip the tiniest amount of warm water from your skin pouch. Your lips are always dry, your tongue always dusty, but somehow you're getting used to it. You meet eyes with another rider. He raises his brow as if to say, "Still alive?" You nod back. Barely. By midday, you halt near a stunted tree, probably the only one for a dozen miles. Camels collapse like felled furniture. You dismount and stretch. Your knees crack. Someone hands you a date, which you eat slowly, savoring the sudden rush of sugar. Someone else offers salted almonds. Someone else tries to sell you an amulet shaped like a camel tooth. The afternoon is a blur of sand and sun. Occasionally, a bird circles overhead. Once, you spot desert fox tracks. Another time, a weird clicking sound. Scarabs, maybe, or some horrible beetle party happening just beneath the sand. Your mind drifts. You wonder how many people have done this exact journey, carried spices, sung to their camels, stared at the horizon until the heat made them see double. You wonder how many fell behind, how many led, how many whispered stories by the firelight and vanished before their names were carved into history. In a way, it's comforting. You're part of something enormous and slow-moving, like a dune shifting shape under years of wind. Not fast, not flashy, but real. As the sun dips again, your caravan stops near a well. The water is brackish but cold. You splash your face, watch your camel guzzle water like it's his life's purpose, and try not to think about how much sand made it into your boots today. That night, you sit beside Soggy, brush some of the sand from his coat, and he leans into your arm like a grumpy dog who's finally forgiven you for making him carry 200 pounds of nutmeg. You share a laugh with a trader who's missing 3 fingers and says it was from wrestling a crocodile. You're about 40% sure that's a lie, but he tells it well, so you let it slide. Another trader starts humming, low, wordless, almost like a lullaby. The camels begin to quiet. One by one, heads droop. Bells stop. The night presses in. Above you, the stars return, familiar and strange. They don't care who you are, but they see you. You lie down again, listening to the last shuffle of hooves, the occasional snort, the breeze carrying tiny whispers of sand across skin and stone. The camel beside you groans softly in his sleep. You close your eyes and let yourself follow him.
The next morning starts not with the sun, but with the sound of coughing. Not yours, though your throat is dry enough to qualify, but from a man somewhere behind the water cart. It's that deep, sand-in-the-lungs kind of cough that echoes like a drum across the cold desert dawn. You peel open one eye and see traders already moving like shadows, stirring embers, tightening packs. Camels bellow in protest. Another day on the spice route begins. You sit up, sore in places you didn't know had nerves, and rub your temple. Someone hands you a small clay cup of tea, steeped herbs with a leaf floating sideways like a tiny lost boat. It tastes faintly of mint, mostly of dust, but it's warm and that's enough. The caravan is heading into a different stretch now. You've left the more forgiving dunes and entered a region the locals call the Throat of Salt. No one really explains the name, they just say it with a frown. There are no trees here, just flat, parched terrain sprinkled with sharp white crusts, ancient salt beds that glint like broken mirrors underfoot. Each step crunches, each breath tastes metallic. Soggy grunts beside you, unbothered as usual. You adjust your robe, check your water skin, and start walking. A few miles in, you start to see them. Old caravanserai. Ruins now, mostly. Half-fallen walls, shattered tiles, doorways leading to nowhere. These were once the lifelines of the route. Rest stops, fortified inns, and marketplaces where travelers could eat, wash, sleep, trade, and hear the latest gossip about bandits or rainfall. A few still operate in the distance, guarded by grizzled hosts and packs of lazy dogs, but this one is hollowed out. Still, the air carries a ghost of spices, cardamom, clove, something sweet you can't place. You walk through it carefully, imagining what it must have looked like full of people. Silks hanging from arches, merchants yelling prices, children running with bowls of dates, camels growling over shared feed. There's a cracked mosaic under your boots, sun-bleached but still lovely. 2 doves, wings outstretched, facing a stylized pomegranate. Historians still argue whether these outposts were government-run or informal cooperatives run by merchant guilds. Some say there was a tax for staying overnight, paid in salt or silver. Others say it was free, as long as you shared news from afar. Either way, they were critical, like medieval truck stops minus the trucker hats. You press on. The road flattens more. The wind picks up, tossing little cyclones of grit around your feet. A few traders pull scarves tighter. You learn to do the same without eating half your own cloth. By midday, the heat gets ambitious. The salt crusts sparkle so brightly it feels like you're walking through a field of shattered chandeliers. Camels spit more, tempers fray. You hear 2 merchants argue over whether they're actually lost, and one throws a sandal dramatically, only to immediately regret it when the sand swallows it whole.
To distract yourself, you fall in beside Malik, one of the older guides. His beard is long and his eyebrows are longer. He tells you that this path, though brutal, was once part of a secret detour used by smugglers who didn't want to pay caravan taxes. They carried bundles of saffron wrapped in sheep guts to mask the scent from nosy border guards. You wrinkle your nose. He nods solemnly. Yes, sheep guts. Better than being hanged. There's a fringe theory that claims some of these smugglers wore bells not to mimic real caravans, but to lull desert spirits believed to curse solo travelers. Some desert communities believed in wind jinn, shape-shifting beings who lured travelers off course with illusions. Bells, they thought, annoyed them, or tricked them into thinking you were a group. Either way, the jingling was considered insurance. You look around at the slowly bobbing line of beasts and bells and wonder, maybe the whole caravan is one big bluff against being forgotten. Eventually, you stop near a rock outcrop that provides the thinnest sliver of shade. You drop beside it with a sigh. Your canteen gives a sad little slosh. Time to ration. Fatima offers you a bite of something chewy. You ask what it is. She shrugs. It was alive once. That's not helpful, but you eat it anyway. Later, you help unload a bundle of black pepper, tightly wrapped in oiled leather and sealed with wax. You handle it carefully. This stuff is worth nearly its weight in gold in some cities. One tiny pinch of it in the markets of Rome could buy a decent meal, or half a tunic if you're not picky about size. The paradox is kind of funny. People trek through death zones to transport stuff that makes soup taste better. But that's the human story, isn't it? Risking everything for a better meal. Pepper wasn't just spice, it was status. To serve food with pepper meant you had money, power, connections to lands far beyond the horizon. Kings demanded it, generals hoarded it. Monks scribbled worried notes about how spicy food might lead to impure thoughts. Yes, really. There's a whole tangent there, but let's keep it PG. You think about that as you nibble some dried camel jerky, which tastes like smoked sandal and disappointment. You chew slowly, try not to break a molar. As the day bleeds into evening, the wind dies down. The ground stops hissing underfoot. Your clothes cling to your back with sweat and salt. Your boots are a crusty horror. You try not to think about your socks. The caravan stops early today. One of the camels has a sore foot, and the lead merchant claims he dreamed of a sandstorm. That's reason enough to halt. You set up your mat near a scatter of rocks and rest your head on your bundle of spare robes. The stars take their places again above you, as precise and patient as ever. Someone's playing a flute now, badly but earnestly. A few camels groan along like backup singers. Someone laughs. A small fight breaks out over whose turn it is to tend the fire. Then silence again. You lie back, gaze into the endless sky, and let your thoughts meander like a lazy river. You remember what Malik said earlier, how traders used to guide themselves by not just stars, but wind patterns. The desert talks, he'd muttered. If you listen long enough, it tells you where to go. You're not sure what it's telling you tonight, but it feels kind. Sleep comes softly now, not all at once, just a slow melting away of the day's weight, a letting go of worry, heat, and aching limbs. You turn on your side, feeling the ground warm beneath you from the day's sun. You hear Soggy give a last snort, settling in. Your eyes flutter. You are still, and the world is still with you. You're already walking before you're fully awake. The ground is cold beneath your sandals, the kind of chill that tricks your brain into thinking you're back home, padding across stone floors before sunrise. But then your back twinges, your shoulders remind you of yesterday's load, and you remember, no, this is the salt road. There's no warm hearth waiting, just another endless stretch of white crust and thirsty air. Soggy looks unusually alert this morning. He's chewing thoughtfully on what appears to be an old sandal strap. You don't ask questions anymore. You just pat his side, retie the knot on your satchel, and follow the flickering lanterns being passed forward along the caravan.
The group is moving earlier than usual. Word drifted through camp last night of a rival caravan moving fast behind you, one with a reputation for cutting deals and corners. Competition. It's not violence anyone fears, though accidents and sabotage aren't unheard of, but profit. A head start matters. Even a few hours could mean the difference between empty markets or premium buyers waiting at the next hub. You press forward, the salt crunching like frost underfoot, and the horizon slowly blushes with pink. Your mind drifts, as it always does on these walks. Something about the rhythm of camel hooves and the jingle of harness bells sends your thoughts scattering. You think about what you're carrying: cardamom from India, dried rose petals, a small pouch of powdered saffron tucked in with the cooking pans. Luxury, all of it, worth crossing entire empires for. Historians still argue whether saffron truly originated in Persia or further east. Some claim the spice first bloomed in Crete. Others insist it was bred on purpose in Kashmir to color the robes of kings. What's known for sure is that it takes over 75,000 crocus flowers to produce a single pound. You suddenly feel very nervous about that tiny pouch in your bag. One jolt could be very expensive soup. By midday, the terrain changes again. The salt flats fade and are replaced by gravelly ochre soil, scrub brush, the occasional twisted acacia tree, and then a surprise: ruins. The bones of an ancient fortress rise crookedly from the landscape. No road leads directly to it anymore, but your guide veers left without a word. This is a known stop, a secret one maybe. The structure is weather-beaten, the corners smoothed by wind, but the walls still stand high enough to cast blessed shade. You duck through an arched doorway and feel instant relief. Inside, it smells of stone and time. A few people wander through, whispering. You follow a corridor to what used to be a courtyard, now a shallow bowl of sand and dry weeds. Someone has painted faint murals on one wall: riders in bright robes, camels with golden saddles, a large hand lifted in blessing. Some say these were once border forts run by desert queens, women who taxed traders fairly, protected caravans with small armies, and ruled from shaded balconies. There's little solid proof, just stories and symbols, and that mural with the hand.
Fatima joins you. She points out an old inscription, barely legible. "Blessed are the beasts who carry the world," it says. You both smile. That sounds about right. There's a fringe theory among spice historians, yes, that's a real thing, that claims some of these ruins were once centers of desert alchemy. Not turning lead into gold exactly, but perfecting methods for preserving herbs, infusing oils, and storing spices so they could survive the long haul. They say the walls here once echoed with the scent of myrrh and cinnamon, and that masters of preservation worked their craft in secret, passing recipes only through coded patterns in cloth. You lean closer to the stone, hoping to smell something ancient. You just get dust. The caravan doesn't linger long. Everyone's edgy, keeping an eye on the trail behind. You mount again, your thighs protesting, and head out. As you ride, you pass another traveler walking alone. She's older, hunched, her camel lean but alert. No caravan, no banner, just a heavy pack, 2 silver rings on her fingers, and a long staff strapped to her side. She nods as you pass, and your guide quietly mutters, "Messenger." There were always messengers on the spice routes. Couriers trusted to deliver letters, secrets, sometimes coded beads or folded silk with hidden ink. They traveled faster than caravans, stopping only at known waterholes, guided by memory and instinct. They knew every ruin, every shadow, every stretch of sand where a single wrong turn meant bones. Historians still debate how reliable these messages really were. Some claim royal empires had networks more advanced than Europe's medieval postal systems. Others say most messages were just word of mouth, gossip traded over shared fires and sweet tea. Still, the stories persist of messengers who crossed hundreds of miles without once being caught, their letters sewn into camel saddles or braided into their own hair. The sun climbs higher. The heat rises off the ground like breath. You find yourself longing for the next camp, not because your legs ache or your throat's dry, though they are, but because you've started to crave the stories. Every night, someone tells a new one. Last night, it was a tale about a sand lion that eats only dishonest traders. Before that, a ghost who walks the dunes offering saffron in exchange for memories. Tonight, maybe you'll hear the one about the man who found a cave full of ancient coins, but could only take as much as he could carry without blinking. He blinked, of course. They always blink. The line slows suddenly. You squint ahead and see it, an oasis. Small but real, a pool of water no larger than a house, ringed with palms and one very determined fig tree. You'd swear you hear music, but that's probably just your brain turning dehydration into a party. The caravan pours toward it. You dismount. Your knees give out slightly. Someone laughs. You don't care. You run a cloth through the water and press it to your face. It smells faintly brackish, but it's liquid and it's cool. Soggy bellows and lumbers straight in. His hoofs sink slightly into the wet edge, and he drinks so greedily you think he might burst. Fatima's already peeled off her outer robe and is wading knee-deep. "Come on," she says, "we'll smell better than dead goats." That's not wrong. You step in. The cold is exquisite. Every muscle releases a small sigh. You laugh, real, loud, slightly hysterical laughter, and splash your arms, your neck, your eyes. Around you, camels grunt in joy. Someone starts playing that flute again. It's still terrible. It doesn't matter. This is the life of the road. Misery, dust, luxury, silence, and then sudden, brilliant joy. Like water in the desert, like music after miles of sand. You dry slowly in the sun, stretched out on a rock. Soggy dozes beside you, belly round, breath steady. You scratch behind his ear. He flicks his tail lazily. The sun begins its descent. Shadows lengthen. The caravan will move again soon, but not just yet. For now, the world is still. Even the wind has stopped to listen. Evening falls in slow, honeyed strokes across the desert, and the sky turns from blue to a deep, bruised lavender. You're dry now, almost too dry again, and your skin feels tight with salt. The kind of tight that makes your cheeks crack when you smile. But you smile anyway, because Soggy just sneedied himself into a tumble of camel limbs and managed to look personally offended by the ground. The oasis has revived the caravan. Everyone's moving lighter, shoulders less hunched, voices louder. A small fire pops to life, then another. Someone's boiling lentils, someone else is roasting something that smells like spiced goat. Maybe. You don't ask. You've learned better. Tonight's story is already forming in the air. Fatima's warming up, pulling listeners close with that casual, sing-song tone that always means she's got a good one. "You know," she says, "there's a stretch of this route where the stars go wrong." You pause mid-sip. "Wrong?" someone asks. "Backwards," she nods. "That's what they say. South becomes north. East turns in on itself. Traders who relied too heavily on the sky found themselves walking in circles. One man swore he saw his own campfire again 3 nights in a row." You glance up at the stars. They look fine to you. Beautiful, cold, eternal. But now you're wondering if they're laughing. There's a real debate among scholars about this phenomenon. Some attribute the confusion to magnetic anomalies in certain iron-rich regions. Others say it was the effect of sandstorms distorting visibility, combined with identical-looking dunes. And some whisper, still, that the desert has places that bend space, just a little, enough to lose a man, enough to hide a kingdom. A kingdom in the sand. It's a common motif. Almost every trader has a version. Some say it was buried by time. Others insist it appears only to those who need it most. The city of brass, the lost market, a place where spices flow like wine and camels wear golden harnesses, where time stops and you can trade a memory for a meal. You lean back against your blanket and let Fatima's voice take you deeper. She talks about a man who found the city by accident, following a trail of strange blue stones through a canyon. He walked for 7 days, guided by a bird that didn't blink. When he finally saw the gates, huge, bronze, covered in writing he couldn't read, he knocked 3 times and offered his last pinch of cinnamon as tribute. He was let in, but no one else ever saw him again. It's obviously a myth, but also, isn't that exactly what the spice route is? Chasing something shimmering just out of reach. You're full now, fed and warm, the fire low beside you. The stars lean closer. The caravan is asleep again, some snoring, some murmuring in dreams. You curl under your cloak and drift. The next morning, the road changes again. Not in a way you can name at first. The sand's still there. The sun's still ambitious. The camels are still suspicious of everything. But something's different. A smell in the air, a sharpness, a hint of something electric underfoot. You're entering rocky country now. No more soft dunes, but craggy paths and jagged outcrops. The camels hate it. You hate it. Everyone hates it. But it's necessary. This is the mountain pass that leads toward Petra, the rose city carved into the cliffs, once a vital node in the spice network. It's not your final destination, but it's on the way. A trading partner, a memory carved in stone. As the terrain rises, so does the temperature, ironically. The rocks trap heat, bounce it back at you like angry mirrors. You pull your headscarf tighter. Soggy walks with careful disdain, each footstep a small drama. There's not much talking now, just the grind of sand under hooves, the occasional grunt. Everyone is watching their step. These rocks have teeth. Still, the view is something else. From the higher ridges, you can see miles of desert unfold behind you, ripples of color, the faint thread of your path like a scar across the sand. You squint and spot the glint of another caravan far off. Maybe the rival one. Maybe just another dream chasing the same horizon. You pause beside a carved stone that marks an old trail, a Nabatean symbol etched deep into the face. It's a spiral framed by 2 wings. Path of wind and wealth, your guide murmurs. The Nabateans. Now that's a story. They were desert magicians, in a sense. Not literal magic, but engineering sorcery. They built cities in cliffs, caught water in hidden cisterns, and controlled the spice trade for centuries. Historians still argue whether they were originally nomads or settled from the beginning, but there's no arguing their brilliance. They could turn dust into coin. Petra, their crown jewel, wasn't just a city. It was a market, a meeting place, a sanctuary. Spices, silk, incense, all passed through its gates. And it wasn't just commerce, it was culture, religion, politics, a crossroads of everything. There's a small legend about Petra, one you whisper on nights like last night, that somewhere deep in the cliffs is a locked chamber with a perfectly preserved dish of food from a royal banquet. Clove-stewed lamb, rosewater cakes, a saffron custard that never spoils. The ultimate preserved spice meal, waiting for a feast that will never come. You chuckle softly at the thought as your foot slips a little on the rock. The road gets narrower here, single file. You grip Soggy's lead and guide him carefully. One wrong step and it's a fast roll down a very unforgiving hill. But Soggy is steady, begrudgingly graceful. You trust him more than your own boots now. Eventually, you pass through a narrow gorge, just wide enough for 2 camels shoulder to shoulder. The shadows here are sharp, the air cooler. You smell thyme and something woodsy growing wild in the cracks of the rock. The air vibrates slightly, like a drum held just above the flame. It feels alive. This is the kind of place that hums with memory. You whisper, without meaning to. No one speaks loudly here. By midday, the rocks widen into a plateau. You stop there for lunch. dried figs, a hard cheese that squeaks between your teeth, and flatbread still warm from someone's clever use of a sun-heated stone. You chew slowly, eyes on the horizon, the air shifting again. Something about the wind feels celebratory. You've crossed a threshold. And not just in geography. You're starting to feel part of it now. Not just a guest of the route, but an ingredient in the stew, a note in the caravan song. Your boots are scuffed properly. Your cloak smells of fire and fennel, and your fingers are stained from handling clove bundles. When you walk now, the camels follow without side eyes. Mostly. You belong.
You wake up to laughter, real laughter. Not the sleep-drunk mumblings of traders or the nervous chuckles that follow a snapped sandal strap, but deep, rolling laughter that feels like it's been waiting a long time to arrive. You blink, sit up, and squint against the pink dawn. The camp is already alive. Someone has set a pot of cardamom tea over the coals. A thin wisp of smoke curls skyward like it has something important to say. Then you see the source of the laughter. Children. A whole knot of them darting between the camels, like mischievous wind spirits, throwing date pits at one another and daring each other to get close to the oldest, meanest-looking beast in the caravan. The camels are surprisingly patient with them. Maybe they remember being young, or maybe they just know a fellow troublemaker when they see one. You're at a midway town now, not a city, but more than a stop. A place with real homes, a small market, and people who don't look like they're always about to leave. You rub your eyes, stretch, and wonder how your body still exists after that mountain pass. It shouldn't. You probably died and just haven't noticed yet. Your guide claps you on the back. "Breakfast," he says, and then we trade. You're led to a shaded stall where a woman with fierce eyebrows and gold-threaded sleeves serves you something that might be porridge or might be spiced plaster. It's amazing either way. You eat like you haven't tasted anything in years, and your stomach weeps with joy. Then it's time to work. The market is already buzzing. Carpets hang like colorful waves from wooden beams. Baskets overflow with dried limes, strings of garlic, sugared ginger. There's a stall selling dyed cloth that smells of pomegranate and smoke. Another with tiny perfume bottles, rose, sandalwood, myrrh. This is where things happen. This is the pulse. You spread your wares, the cardamom, the saffron, the rose petals. Traders crowd in. Fingers pinch, sniff, inspect. Coins are weighed, not just exchanged. Trust is good, but verification is divine. Historians often highlight this part of the spice trade, the silent rules of market etiquette that crossed language and empire. In some places, you could lay your goods and your price without ever speaking a word. Haggling was done through gestures, facial expressions, even foot taps. You think of that now, watching two men nearly blink each other into bankruptcy over a cinnamon log. You barter, you swap, you win some and lose some. You sell a handful of dried hibiscus to a man with one eyebrow and an incredible mustache. You trade 2 sticks of cassia for a pair of beaded slippers that almost fit. Almost. And then, tucked behind a draped curtain, you find her. An old woman, quiet as a shadow, surrounded by scrolls. You pause, because this is not a spice stall. This is something else. She watches you, waiting. You kneel. It feels like the right thing to do. She unrolls one of the scrolls. It's not in a language you know, but the drawings are clear. Preservation symbols, maps of ancient routes, notes written in swirling inked shorthand. The scent rising from the scrolls is unforgettable. Clove? Dust? Memories? You ask her what they are. She doesn't speak, just points to a tiny silver vial on the table. You lift it, uncork it, smell. You're instantly in a field of marigolds, somewhere you've never been, during a time that never existed. Your hands are younger. The wind is warm. You pull back, dazed. She nods once and replaces the vial. There's a fringe theory, of course there is, that traders once passed coded scents, not words.
that rare perfumers and scribes could write messages in smell, combining herbs, spice oils, resins to create olfactory sentences, whole arguments even. Historians still argue whether this was a real practice or just wishful storytelling, but you believe it now. You leave her stall lighter than you entered, the kind of lighter that's not about weight. Later that day, back at camp, you help Fatima sort supplies. She hands you a jar of preserved lemons that smells like sunshine and regret. You ask her if she's ever seen a spice message. She grins. Only once. Nearly married someone by accident. You make a note to be careful where you sniff. That evening, the caravan prepares to leave again. The market has emptied, the bustle replaced with soft farewells and the scrape of repacked goods. The children wave you off like old friends. One of them slips something into your palm before running. Dried orange peel wrapped in silk. You hold it tightly. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. You walk again. The terrain evens out into rolling scrubland. Grass pokes stubbornly through sand. You pass scattered stones that may once have been buildings or altars. It's hard to tell. The road itself isn't marked, but your feet know it now. Your bones know it. Soggy grunts behind you, tired but loyal. His pack sways gently. You hear the tiny clink of spice jars. You think about that vial of scent again, and how memory travels in ways we don't always see. You climb a small rise and pause. Ahead lies the next leg of your journey, open desert, rippling with heat, dotted with the silhouettes of distant dunes and maybe a caravan or two. It's quiet, but not empty. The spice road is never empty. You take a deep breath. You smell cinnamon, dust, camel sweat, old dreams, and something else, adventure.
You step down from the rise, your boots sinking half an inch into warm sand with each step, the grains shifting like tiny secrets beneath your soles. The desert stretches ahead again, not a blank expanse, but a living landscape that hums, breathes, and occasionally bites. You glance back once at the town you're leaving behind. The smoke from morning fires curls gently upward, a thread connecting what you've left with what you carry forward. The caravan moves slower now. Not because the camels are tired, though Soggy gives you an expression that says he would absolutely accept early retirement, but because this stretch of the spice route demands patience. The terrain is deceptive. What looks smooth and flat often hides soft patches, wind traps, and, occasionally, ancient ruins worn so low they're mistaken for odd rock formations. You pass a crumbling wall, just one, all alone in the sand. No context, no other structures nearby. Someone whispers it was once a watchtower. Someone else insists it's the last piece of a cursed palace. Fatima calls it Desert IKEA and keeps walking. You catch her grin and can't help but smile. This is how you get through miles that don't change, by filling the silence with absurdity. Still, there's a weight to this stretch, not in your pack, but in your mind. Because you're now entering a zone that once marked a kind of border, not political, but economic and cultural. The place where spices shifted hands in bigger quantities, where taxes were demanded by petty pings and protection fees by not-so-petty warlords. You're in the region historians still can't agree on how to classify: a no-man's land, a melting pot, or a sophisticated network of microstates that operated on shared trust and mutual fear. There are stories of caravans vanishing here, not in sandstorms, not in battle, just gone. A favorite tale? The tale of the silent caravan. Supposedly, it was a group of traders so skilled, so secretive, they never made camp, never lit fires, and never left tracks. They moved like ghosts and traded only by moonlight. Some say they were protectors of the purest saffron. Others claim they were thieves who stole recipes, not goods. And one version, Fatima's favorite, says they weren't even human, just the desert playing games. You try to imagine a camel ghost. It's oddly soothing. Midway through the day, the wind kicks up. A minor sandstorm, not one of the real screamers, but enough to sting your cheeks and fill your scarf with grit. You pull your hood low, squint through narrowed eyes, and watch the world turn gold and angry. The caravan halts. Camels kneel with practiced grumbles. Everyone goes still. You huddle close to Soggy, who smells like the barn you never had. His body is warm, solid, and oddly calming. And in that sudden, muffled world, your thoughts wander. You think about cloves. Yes, really. Because someone once told you cloves were so valuable in medieval Europe, people would hoard them in locked boxes and carry a single bud as a charm. They were used in cooking, medicine, even embalming. At one point, a handful of cloves could buy you a small house, assuming you lived in a place where zoning laws didn't exist yet. But cloves didn't grow in the Middle East or Africa. They came from islands far away, the Molucca Islands or the Spice Islands, thousands of miles east. So how did they get here? Through people like you, people sweating in the sand, people yelling at camels, people who carried tiny, fragrant dreams across entire continents. The sand settles, slowly.
The air clears like a curtain lifting. The world returns. And then, suddenly, you see it. A pile of broken pottery half buried in a dune, scattered like bones. A shattered amphora, a bead, a glint of oxidized metal. You kneel. The shards are patterned, blue ink faded to gray. Designs that suggest Persia or maybe Bactria. Fatima kneels beside you. Old rest stop, she says, running her fingers through the sand. Or old mistake. You ask what she means. Sometimes, she says softly, traders got too confident, tried a shortcut, trusted a mirage. You both fall silent. The desert makes you reflect. It also makes you deeply appreciate full canteens. You camp early that evening, the memory of the pottery still in your thoughts. The camels are restless, picking at their feed with disinterest. You're about to lie down when a nearby trader pulls out a stringed instrument, a rebab, and begins to play. Soft, slow, the kind of music that seems to shimmer on the air, half sound, half memory. You close your eyes. The music pulls up images in your mind, like tides tugging at buried shells. A feast in Damascus where cinnamon was worth its weight in silver. A Roman banquet where garum, that fermented fish sauce, met black pepper in an unlikely but weirdly popular marriage. An Indian apothecary grinding turmeric for a ritual salve. The trade was never just about taste. It was medicine. It was politics. It was seduction. It was power. Historians still argue whether the demand for spice created exploration, or if it merely justified it after the fact. Either way, the result was the same: entire empires built on flavor. You roll onto your back and stare at the stars. They're sharp tonight, cold, indifferent. You trace the lines between them, invent your own constellations. One looks like a camel. One looks like a pile of lentils. One might be your missing sock. You're falling asleep now, thoughts drifting like mist. But before you fully let go, one last story floats in. There's a forgotten tribe somewhere out there that only trades by smell. They speak no common tongue. They accept no coins. But if you offer them a scent they've never known, they'll give you whatever you ask. Salt, shelter, secrets. No one knows what happens if you offer them a smell they already carry. You drift. A spice-scented breeze carries you deeper. You wake before sunrise to a sound you don't expect. Silence. No camel groans, no fire crackle, no whispered jokes from early risers. Just the eerie hush of a desert holding its breath. It takes a moment for your brain to catch up. Your body aches, your face feels sun-dried, and there's still the faintest scent of cumin and mystery clinging to your tunic. You sit up and look around. The others are steering slowly, like dough rising in the warmth. Fatima is already up, boiling something that smells like it'll either heal you or knock you out cold. Maybe both. Today, the terrain changes again. The dunes roll less. The sand tightens into hard-packed earth and scattered stones. You pass through narrow corridors of rock that look like the ribs of some long-dead beast. And above it all, the sky begins to stretch wider, less like a ceiling, more like an ocean flipped upside down. A trader near you murmurs a blessing as you pass a half-buried statue. Just the nose and part of the crown remain, peeking out from the sand like they're trying to eavesdrop. No one knows who it was. Some ancient king? A forgotten merchant god? Or maybe just an ego-heavy trader with spare stone and poor taste. Fatima votes for the last one. The path narrows again. Not quite a canyon, but enough to create echoes. Your footsteps sound like you've been cloned. Soggy's hooves add a rhythmic bassline to the trail. As the day unfolds, you find yourself thinking more about the lives that existed along this path. The people who didn't just pass through, but made their homes here, on the edges of the route. Farmers who coaxed herbs from dust. Well-keepers who offered water in exchange for gossip. Blacksmiths who made camel bells with tiny blessings engraved inside. There's a popular myth among traders, especially the older ones, that you can still hear the bells of long-lost caravans if the wind's right. You pause as a breeze rushes through the rocks. It does sound a little musical, or maybe that's just the creak of Soggy's knees. By late morning, the caravan reaches a small spring. It's no oasis, just a stubborn trickle from a rock face, but it's enough to refill canteens, let the camels slurp and spit, and give you a moment to rinse your face. The water is cold, shockingly so. It startles your brain awake in a way that nothing else has all day. You consider dunking your whole head in, but the memory of the last time you tried that and almost swallowed a beetle stops you. While the caravan rests, an old trader, one of the quiet ones with a face like crumpled parchment, pulls you aside. He unwraps a cloth bundle from his belt, revealing a handful of dried seeds. He holds one up between thumb and forefinger. Fenugreek, he says. You nod. You've heard of it. Used in stews, teas, maybe as a cure for heartbreak, depending on which region you're in and how melodramatic the storyteller is. He tells you a story. Once, a shipment of fenugreek was accidentally mixed with wild caraway during a trade stop. The result? A blend so fragrant, so strange, that it sparked a culinary craze in a distant city. Entire dishes were invented around the mistake. Demand for the mystic blend surged, prices tripled, and for a few years, those two seeds together were more precious than saffron. Historians still argue whether this really happened, or if it was just marketing. But isn't that the same thing sometimes?
The trader smiles, drops a few seeds into your palm, and walks away. No explanation. You pocket them, just in case they're magical. Or delicious. Back on the trail, the rocks give way to flatlands again. The heat rises like a beast waking up. You start seeing mirages, pools of water that vanish when you squint, distant cities that blink out like bad dreams. But then, something real. A stone marker. Tall, carved, and unmistakably deliberate. The language is half eroded, but someone translates. It's a road sign, a real one. You're close to one of the major crossroads. Not quite a city, but the kind of place where routes split. One leading west toward the Mediterranean, another curving east into lands heavy with cinnamon, nutmeg, and the ghosts of old sea empires. Crossroads like this were critical. They were where goods were tallied, taxed, sometimes stolen. Where languages clashed and combined. Where spies watched traders and traders watched them back. Where a single wrong turn could lead to profit or disaster. You feel a thrill, like you're about to level up. The town is visible by late afternoon. Low stone buildings rise like heat-warped mirages, but this time they stay solid as you approach. Walls of mud brick and faded paint, banners flapping lazily in the breeze. Even the camels perk up.
One of them spits, possibly in excitement. Inside the town, it's chaos, but the good kind. The streets are packed with people. Every second stall is selling something you've never seen before. Burnt orange berries, tiny purple peppers, dried lotus roots, powdered bark with names you can't pronounce. The smells are overwhelming. Your nose practically does cartwheels. You see a man chewing something bright green. He grins, revealing teeth stained the color of spring grass. Fatima tells you it's cut, chewed to stay awake. You consider trying it, then remember how you get after 2 cups of tea. Maybe not. You trade more spices, adding to your stash. You pick up a strange black salt that smells faintly of eggs but tastes like thunder. You meet a woman who sells a paste made of crushed rose petals and black cardamom, allegedly an aphrodisiac, a balm for headaches, and excellent on bread. You buy some, for the bread, obviously. The sun begins to set and the whole town seems to glow gold. Light bounces off copper pots and spice jars, turning everything into a mirage that you can actually touch. Someone plays a flute from a rooftop. Someone laughs like they've never known sorrow. And for a moment, you feel like you could live here. Just stop walking, open a shop, sell fenugreek blends and trade stories. Let your camel retire and get into yoga. Maybe knit. But you don't, because the route still calls. Always forward.
Morning breaks with a chill, unexpected in the desert, but you've learned by now not to trust your assumptions out here. The warmth will come. It always does. But for now, the world feels cooler, quieter, as though it's paused to reflect. You pack up slowly. The spice town behind you is already steering, its rooftops turning blush pink under the rising sun. Some of the merchants wave lazily as you go. Others ignore you, already back to the business of bartering over cardamom, peppercorns, and endless varieties of dates. You pass one cart stacked entirely with nutmeg, wrapped in fine cloth like royalty. The smell lingers in your nose even as the town fades behind you. Today's leg of the journey takes you toward the foothills. The land isn't steep yet, but it's shifting. Less sand, more packed soil. Small tufts of scrub cling to the earth like hopeful punctuation marks. You spot birds now and then, little ones with sharp cries and urgent wing beats. They're loud for such tiny things. One flaps across your path and seems to scold you personally. You imagine he's saying, "Still walking, are you? No wings yet?" Tss. Soggy snorts. Maybe he understands bird sarcasm. As you climb, your thoughts begin to settle on a more specific topic, the politics of spice. You've heard bits and pieces, of course, whispers of monopolies, clashes over cloves, intrigues involving cinnamon and shady treaties scratched into goatskin parchment. But now, with the quiet hills rising around you, you begin to piece it together. Long before Europe discovered spices, long before they sent ships to India and claimed it was innovation, there were already empires in place that controlled the flow of flavor. Arab traders, Persian brokers, Indian kingdoms with armies of scent-savvy bureaucrats. Ports like Aden, Hormuz, and Calicut weren't just trading hubs. They were geopolitical chessboards where every grain of pepper carried the weight of strategy. And in the middle of it all, camels. Always the camels. Historians still argue whether the land routes or the sea routes were more significant in the early centuries. Some claim the maritime spice trade outpaced the desert caravans within a few hundred years. Others insist that the camels were still the backbone of regional movement, especially through politically fragmented areas. You know one thing for sure, the camel route leaves more dust in your socks. You crest a ridge, and the view opens up, a long valley framed by hills that look like sleeping lions. There's a river below, a thin ribbon, barely a few meters across, but it glints in the sunlight like a dropped necklace. Life clusters near it. Green patches, dwellings made of stacked stone and thatch, farmers, goats. The caravan descends.
Down in the valley, you stop at a village that seems frozen in time. Everything here smells different, not dry and spiced, but damp and herbal. Someone offers you tea brewed with mountain sage and juniper berries. You sip it slowly. It tastes like someone tried to turn a thunderstorm into a beverage. Sharp, unexpected. You like it. An old man in the village shows you a collection of scrolls. They're not ancient, maybe a few decades old, but they're records, trade ledgers. Mostly numbers, but some include notes. How many bags of saffron were passed through? What kinds of illnesses were treated with dried ginger? Which spices were most requested by passing soldiers? He points to one line and grins. It's written in a different ink. It says, "One merchant, possibly cursed, avoid clove contact, demanded cinnamon, but eyes glowed." You ask if it's a joke. He shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe he was just really into cinnamon. You chuckle, but part of you wonders. There's something about spice that lends itself to magic, isn't there? Everywhere you go, you hear about its power, not just culinary, but alchemical. Ginger to warm the blood, turmeric to purify the spirit, black cumin to ward off evil, myrrh for offerings to gods and the dead. One traveler tells you about the ancient Egyptians who used spices in embalming. They believed the right combination could preserve not just the body, but the soul's scent, so it could find its way in the afterlife. He leans in close and whispers, "They even used cinnamon and cassia in their mummification blends. Makes you wonder what eternity smells like." You nod and smile, then quietly check your armpits. You spend the evening in the valley. The food here is unlike anything you've tasted. Lamb roasted with sumac and fennel, flatbread brushed with za'atar and crushed olive paste, a kind of fermented lentil porridge you can't pronounce but want to marry. That night, you lie beneath stars again, only this time on a small rooftop, a borrowed wool blanket pulled over your shoulders. There's a dog somewhere nearby, snoring. The village is quiet, save for the occasional goat drama. You think about how spice doesn't just move through space, it moves through time. Carried on wind, on breath, in story. Recipes whispered from grandmother to granddaughter. Dishes that survive empires. The way cardamom traveled from the jungles of India to the kitchens of Scandinavian bakers, hitching a ride on conquest and curiosity. You wonder what future foods are being born right now, in kitchens and carts and accidental mix-ups like that fenugreek story. You wonder what your own scent trail will be when you're long gone. Will someone one day taste a strange blend and think of this moment? Of the desert, the camels, the snoring dogs? Or maybe they'll just wonder who first thought of putting black pepper in a strawberry tart. Either way, you hope it's delicious. A wind picks up, soft and cool. You close your eyes. The journey continues tomorrow. But for now, the valley cradles you gently, like a spoon of warm honey. The hills rise like old shoulders as you move on the next day. The caravan's pace slower now, not from weariness, but from awe. The landscape shifts again, from low valleys to sweeping ridgelines, each curve revealing new pockets of life. A moss-draped grove, a cave worn smooth by centuries of wind, a lonely hut with curls of smoke spilling from a chimney that looks like it hasn't collapsed, only out of stubbornness. You pass a stone shrine halfway up the trail, not marked on any map, but unmistakably sacred. A flat-topped boulder carved with looping patterns, some floral, some that look suspiciously like goat tracks. Fatima stops and offers a pinch of cumin and a quiet word. You follow suit, adding a flake of dried saffron. No idea why, it just feels right. A traveler beside you murmurs that shrines like these once dotted the old trade routes like stars. Not all were dedicated to gods. Some honored ancestors. Some were to keep away jinn. Some were just there to mark, "Hey, you've made it this far. Congrats. Try not to die up ahead." You take a moment to breathe deeply. The air here is thin but fresh. You feel a little dizzy.
The altitude or the reverence? It's hard to tell. By midday, you encounter something you don't expect. A fortress. Not the tall, shiny kind with towers and fluttering banners. This one's squat, half sunken into the hillside, its walls thick and hunched like it's trying to hide from time. It's abandoned mostly. Cracked stone steps, iron-bound doors warped shut, windows that gape like toothless mouths. But it still stands. The guide tells you it was once a checkpoint, a tax station, one of many placed along the spice routes by regional powers, eager to get their cut. The soldiers here weren't just warriors, they were accountants with swords. Historians still argue whether these stations helped regulate trade fairly or were just legal piracy dressed in uniform. Probably both. Inside the crumbling walls, you find remnants. A rusted scale, scattered ledgers, a half-burned map showing spice values by region. You can still make out the shorthand symbols for clove, saffron, turmeric, and one you don't recognize, just a spiral circled twice. Fatima squints at it and says, "That's either a lost spice or someone spilled their ink." You decide to believe it was a secret spice. You rest briefly in the shadow of the fort, chewing on dried figs and letting your mind wander. Imagine the lives here, young soldiers from far-off towns, bored and sunburned, traders negotiating bribes, heated debates over whether cinnamon from Ceylon was better than that from Malabar. You picture some official growing rich off a quiet racket, smuggling nutmeg in sacks labeled wheat. Maybe he left one spiral mark behind to brag about it. Some people flex with yachts, others with ink symbols. The caravan continues upward. The incline is sharper now. Soggy groans under the effort, and you're honestly right there with him. Soon you reach a pass known as the Quiet Neck.
No one's sure how it got the name. Maybe because the wind always drops here, or maybe because travelers instinctively lower their voices. It feels watched, not in a threatening way, more like the rocks are listening, judging your fashion choices, hoping you packed extra socks. The silence is so profound you can hear the crunch of individual pebbles beneath your feet. A piece of shale skips under your boot and tumbles down the slope. Everyone pauses until it stops. There's no echo, just stillness. Then a whisper of breeze returns, brushing past like a sigh. You press on. The next camp is high enough that the night comes colder, sharper. Stars scatter above you in numbers you didn't know were possible. There's no moon, just that powdered sparkle smeared across the heavens. Someone starts a fire and pulls out a bag of dried rose hips. They toss a few into a pot along with crushed cinnamon bark and wild thyme. The smell draws everyone closer. It's floral, spicy, earthy, a blend that smells like old love letters and thunder. You sip the tea. It's hot enough to burn, sweet enough to soothe. You hold the cup close to your face and just breathe. Later, a storyteller joins the fire circle. An older woman with braids streaked in silver and a voice so low it hums in your chest. She tells the tale of a mythical spice once grown in a mountain cleft known only to 3 brothers. Each brother guarded a path. Each believed the others would betray him. Eventually, they did. The spice was lost, but the echo of its scent lingered in the air for generations. Birds refused to nest there. Travelers wept without knowing why. And once, it was said, a camel gave birth to twins beneath that cleft, both of them pure white, marked with golden freckles that smelled faintly of the lost spice. You're not sure if the story's supposed to be a warning, a metaphor, or a sales pitch, but you find yourself wishing you could smell that lost spice, just once. The storyteller ends her tale by tossing a handful of seeds into the fire. They pop and crackle, releasing a sharp, citrusy smoke. Everyone watches the sparks drift upward like tiny messengers returning home. That night, curled in your blanket beside a snoring camel, you dream of the spiral-marked spice.
In your dream, you're in a marketplace, but everything is made of glass. The stalls shimmer, the jars float. You open one and the scent inside is so powerful, it erases every memory you've ever had, replacing them with a feeling of falling in love for the first time. When you wake, you remember none of the dream, except the smell, and the fact that you're craving pears for some reason. The caravan is already stirring when you sit up. Soggy is chewing on something that isn't his, again. Fatima passes you a dried mango strip. You chew it slowly as the sky lightens. Somewhere out there, more spice waits, more stories, more strange turns in the road. You're tired, but you're not done. You shoulder your bag, pat your camel, and start walking. Forward, always forward. The path unwinds into a long descending slope the next morning. The kind of gentle, stretched-out decline that tricks your knees into thinking you're fine until 2 hours later when they revolt with a quiet, bitter ache. Still, it's a beautiful kind of descent. The highland air remains crisp, but with a growing warmth that suggests you're slipping back toward the lowlands. The trees are taller now, not towering forests, but thin, graceful things that rustle like old silk when the wind runs through them. They shed narrow leaves that spiral lazily to the ground, some of them catching on Soggy's fur. He looks like a walking garnish. Fatima tells you you're approaching a region once known for its spice gardens, though garden feels like the wrong word. These weren't tidy backyard plots. These were sprawling estates carved into hillsides and riverbanks, layered like spice-scented wedding cakes. You pass the first of them by mid-morning. It's abandoned now, overgrown with vines and sleepy goats, but the terraces are still visible. You spot ancient stone irrigation channels, brilliant engineering that used the slope itself to carry water uphill, sort of. You don't understand how it works exactly, but it's impressive and suspiciously damp. The scent of something lingers in the air, earthy, almost gingery, but with a citrus twist. Maybe wild galangal? Or maybe the ghosts of the garden still practice aromatherapy. You trail your fingers along a broken wall and imagine what it must have been like here at the peak. Laborers gathering cardamom pods under a blazing sun, overseers tallying cloves, children running barefoot through saffron fields, staining their ankles yellow. It must have been a sensory overload: color, scent, sound, sweat. One of the older travelers starts singing as you walk, a soft, repetitive tune. He says it's a lullaby once used by cinnamon pickers to calm bees while harvesting. Yes, you heard that right. Apparently, bees loved cinnamon saplings, and if you didn't sing, you'd get a very stern buzzing. You wonder what other spice myths have been lost to time. Maybe there was a chili that caused prophetic dreams, or a kind of basil that only grew during solar eclipses. Historians still argue whether ancient spice cultivation was more about food, medicine, or ritual. The answer, like most good things, is probably all three. You pause at a small stream that cuts across the road. The camels drink. You crouch to rinse your hands and splash your face. The water is shockingly cold, but it clears the fatigue from your eyes. You spot thin reeds growing at the bank, some braided together with strips of bark. A sign, Fatima says, that someone has passed recently, or perhaps still lives nearby. Sure enough, a short walk later, you come across a cluster of houses. Not ancient ruins this time, but living, breathing homes. Smoke curls from rooftops. Kids chase chickens. You wave. They wave back. One offers you a pickle. You accept it. It's aggressively sour, and your face does things it hasn't done since puberty, but it's clearly made with care, and possibly black lime, judging by the sharp, smoky aftertaste. You hiccup quietly and give the child a thumbs up. In the village, you meet a woman who introduces herself as a spice healer. Not a doctor, not a shaman, just a healer who works with what grows around her. She invites the caravan into her garden, which is more of a jungle, really. Every inch is crammed with plants, vines, roots, and drying bundles of herbs strung like laundry between poles. She touches each plant with reverence, explaining their uses.
dried fennel seeds for digestion, clove oil for toothaches, ground turmeric and honey to heal wounds. She makes a face when she gets to fenugreek, though. Tastes like maple syrup's angry cousin, she says. You tell her about the spiral symbol on the old ledger at the tax fort. Her eyes light up, but she only shakes her head. No one knows what that spice was, or if it even existed. But old traders used spirals for things they didn't want taxed. Could have been a rare blend, or just secrets. Secrets. You roll the word around in your mouth like a peppercorn. After tea, flavored with something she calls dragon mint, which leaves your tongue tingling for a good 20 minutes, you press on. The road begins to flatten, widening as it approaches an ancient crossroads. You recognize it instantly, not from memory, but from instinct. It's the kind of place where things happen, where choices are made. Stone markers stand on each path, worn smooth by wind and centuries of fingers. Some are etched with names, others with symbols. One just says, "Don't trust the figs." You decide not to ask. The main road south leads toward an old walled city. You can just make out the tips of towers on the horizon. Your guide says it was once one of the greatest spice markets on the continent, a place where traders from 3 continents would meet to exchange not just goods, but songs, beliefs, diseases, and, occasionally, insults about each other's camels. The walls grow taller as you approach. The outer gates are partially collapsed, but still dramatic, arches carved with grapevines, chilies, and stars. You walk beneath them, feeling tiny. Inside, the old market square is mostly empty now, just wind curling through broken stalls and toppled carts. But you can feel what it once was. The energy hums in the bones of the city. You pass through echoing corridors, past crumbling warehouses where cinnamon bricks were once stacked high enough to touch the ceiling. You touch a wall and your fingers come back dusty and red. Not blood, paprika, probably. Someone finds a sealed jar tucked behind a stone. It takes a bit of effort, but when it's opened, a puff of scent escapes, intense, sweet, and unmistakable. Real saffron. Centuries old and still fragrant. Everyone falls silent for a moment. You suddenly understand how monks felt when they opened ancient scrolls. Some things hold the soul of history, not in words, but in aroma. As night falls, the caravan settles among the ruins. Fires flicker. Shadows dance across faded murals. Images of elephants, pomegranates, strange birds with too many eyes. You lie back against a worn pillar and let your mind wander. You think about how spice built empires and funded wars, how it preserved food, healed wounds, and shaped entire cuisines. How people risked everything, not for gold, but for scent and flavor, for the promise of wonder. A shooting star cuts across the sky, as if underlining the day. You whisper thanks to the garden ghost, to the spiral-marked merchant, to the bee singers, tax dodgers, and saffron hoarders. You fall asleep with the taste of dragon mint still on your tongue.
The city breathes differently in the morning, no longer mysterious and brooding under moonlight, but somehow proud. Ancient, yes. Cracked and faded, sure, but proud. The way someone with laugh lines and a limp might still hold court in a room just by walking in. You wake to the sound of grinding stones. Someone is already up, crushing dried coriander in a mortar that looks like it could outlive all of you. The air smells warm, peppery, woody, and just a hint of citrus from a nearby tree whose fruit you can't name but would definitely put in a cocktail. Fatima is sitting on the wall, sketching something. Turns out she's been mapping the route as you go. Not just landmarks, but smells, sounds, where we nearly lost Soggy, and excellent flat rock for napping. You ask if she'll publish it someday. She shrugs. Some things are meant to be whispered, not printed. Breakfast is soft bread dipped in olive oil and za'atar, and for once, no one argues over who gets the last piece. You're all too blissfully sleepy, too wrapped in the comfort of food and a morning breeze that doesn't burn your skin off for once. As you prepare to leave, a local steps out from behind a crumbling archway. He looks like he's been watching you for a while. Long beard, longer silence. When he speaks, it's only to ask if you've heard the singing road? You blink. Fatima perks up. Still there? She asks. The man nods and points west. Naturally, you go. The path is narrow, barely carved into the hillside. At times, you feel like one sneeze from Soggy could send you all tumbling into a ravine. But then the wind shifts, and you hear it. A sound, faint at first, like someone humming through a flute. It's the road. Well, not the dirt itself, but the way the wind slips through holes in the cliffside, across naturally carved hollows and not-so-natural tunnels. The result? Music. Actual, eerie, hauntingly beautiful music. It shifts as you walk. One bend gives you deep, hollow tones like a forgotten cello. The next, a soft whistling like reeds in a riverbed. And sometimes, just sometimes, it sounds like a woman singing in a language you don't recognize but wish you did. Historians still argue whether the singing road was an accident of erosion or the deliberate work of bored monks with a passion for acoustics and too much free time. Either way, it feels sacred. You stop for a while, just listening. A few of your fellow travelers sit and close their eyes. One begins to cry, silently. No one interrupts. Eventually, you move on. The terrain grows gentler, the path wider, the soil darker and richer. You spot signs of cultivation again, old terraces reborn with wild herbs and rogue pepper vines. Nature reclaiming agriculture. You can almost hear it grumbling, "Fine, I'll do it myself." You reach a village by a river, still bustling, still fragrant. Here, spice isn't exotic, it's just life. Laundry smells like cardamom. School kids snack on chili fried plantains. Even the dogs smell like anise. You're led to a small spice library tucked behind a temple. It's not huge and it's not full of books. It's full of boxes. Boxes of seeds. Each labeled with a date, a place, a name. Marianum coriander, traded from Sea Captain Arjun, 1734. Ashen fenugreek, banned for 20 years. Honey peppercorn, one survivor pod.
This is a seed vault, but it's also a time machine. The librarian, yes, that's what she calls herself, tells you the story of a man who once tried to eat every known spice in alphabetical order. He got as far as G before spending 3 days in a pond to soothe his internal regrets. You imagine getting to habanero and immediately questioning all your life choices. But you admire the spirit. There's a small room at the back with scent jars, each one sealed and labeled, waiting. You're allowed to sniff 3. You choose randomly. The first smells like old cinnamon and rain on canvas tents. The second is floral, bright, and a little like the shampoo you used as a kid. The third hits you square in the memory. You can't place it exactly, just that it smells like a goodbye you never got to say. You close the lid slowly and thank the librarian. Before leaving, Fatima leaves behind 3 of her own seed pods. They're nothing fancy, just wild cumin from the trail. But the librarian smiles like they were diamonds. You walk on in silence for a while, watching the shadows shift beneath your feet as the sun climbs higher. The next stretch of road is strangely quiet, not ominous, just reflective. Like everyone's thoughts are louder here. You wonder what stories your fellow travelers are carrying, what spices remind them of home, or loss, or love. One tells you star anise reminds her of her grandfather's beard balm. Another says nutmeg smells like heartbreak. Another swears clove oil saved their marriage, though refuses to elaborate. You notice the road forks again. One way leads straight to the coast, where ships still sail with bellies full of turmeric and dried rose.
The other curves into the jungle. Fatima chooses the jungle. You follow because, by now, of course you do. The air turns dense, the trees packed tight. You feel like you've walked into someone else's lungs. Vines drape over branches like scarves flung in a hurry. Monkeys chatter above. Something howls, hopefully for fun. You come across an old stone marker etched with dozens of small spirals. Fatima stops dead. "That's it," she says. You don't understand. She kneels, brushes off the dirt, and shows you a faint mark beside the spirals. The same symbol from the tax fort. The same spiral. The secret spice. She grins, stands up, and gestures around. This jungle used to be a spice farm, massive, hidden, protected by myths and curses and probably a lot of snakes. Historians still argue whether the spiral grove existed or was just a metaphor, but here it is, or was. You step carefully through the brush and spot rows, barely there ridgelines in the earth, but they're too uniform to be natural. You see the remains of planting beds, irrigation ditches, even a stone pestle embedded in the root of a tree. The smell hits you last. Not strong, not obvious, but complex. Peppery, minty, smoky, and something else, something you can't name. Fatima pulls a single leaf from a nearby plant, hands it to you. You sniff, then blink. You're standing in that dream again, the one with glass stalls and jars that float. Just for a second. Then it's gone. You look at her. She just nods. You don't take the plant. You leave it there. The spiral spice, real or imagined, isn't yours to claim. It's enough to know it was real. That someone believed in it enough to bury it in a jungle and mark the trail with whispers. By the time you return to the trail, the sun is slanting low. The caravan is quiet, reflective, a little stunned. You pass around tea laced with tamarind and wild ginger. It tastes like endings. Or maybe just new beginnings.
It rains that night. Not a storm, but a long, steady drizzle that soaks into the canvas, makes the camels groan, and adds a musical patter to everything. You lie under your cloak, listening to water hit leaves, rocks, and Soggy, who sneezes once and falls back asleep like it took all the effort he had left. The next morning, the path is mud. Glorious, clingy, boot-eating mud. Progress is slow. You squelch rather than walk. The jungle starts to thin, though. Not vanish, just open up. Trees space out. Light filters through like lazy syrup. It's warmer again, damp and humming. You wipe your brow with a sleeve and think longingly of fans, chilled fruit, and air that doesn't feel like soup. Soon, you begin to spot markers again. Not carved ones, but stacked stones, hanging bells, even painted symbols on bark. This stretch, Fatima explains, was once the border between rival spice clans. Not kingdoms, not empires, just clans, families. Each with their own methods, their own spice blends, their own deeply specific rules. One clan refused to use cumin on even-numbered days. Another claimed ginger was only potent if harvested during eclipses. One elder swore by peppercorns soaked in goat milk. You try not to imagine the trial and error phase on that one. Historians still argue whether these rivalries were economic or spiritual, or if they were just incredibly competitive cooks. You pass the remains of a checkpoint, a low stone hut overgrown with moss but still sturdy. Inside is a locked box carved with more spirals. No one tries to open it. Some things are better left wondering. By midday, you hear laughter ahead. A village, bigger than the others and clearly thriving. Spices are everywhere. Stalls with towers of powdered color, crimson, ochre, deep forest green. Strings of drying chili hang like garlands.
sacks of cardamom piled like sandbags. A toddler runs past you holding a cinnamon stick as long as his forearm. You wander into the marketplace. It's loud, warm, glorious. Vendors call out in at least 4 languages, haggling over turmeric grades and saffron threads. One woman is selling something called spice beads, little marbles of pressed and dried herbs strung together like jewelry. Wearable seasonings, because why not? You try one. It tastes like licorice and campfire. Not bad. Fatima disappears into the crowd, but you don't worry. You've learned the rhythm of the road now. People scatter, people return. Camels wander, Soggy always finds you. You follow the scent of frying onions to a food stall where a man is making something he calls pepper cloud bread. It's puffy, crisp, and leaves a warm tingle in your sinuses. You take a second, immediately burn your tongue, and accept this as your fate. Overhead, long cloth canopies flap in the breeze. Many are dyed with natural pigments: saffron gold, indigo blue, hibiscus red. Someone offers you a tiny vial of oil for clarity, they say. You sniff it. It smells like oranges that have opinions. The highlight of the village isn't the spice stalls, though. It's the museum. That's what the sign says anyway. Museum of Spices, Memories, and Mistakes. You're already in love.
It's run by a quiet man named Hassan, who greets you with a cup of clove tea and a sheepish smile. The museum is really 3 large rooms, one for history, one for inventions, and one for, as he puts it, the accidents we learn to love. In the history room, you find maps of ancient trade routes, diagrams of camel caravans, and a bizarre little sculpture of a peppercorn with legs. It's not labeled. You ask. Hassan shrugs. It came in a shipment. No one knows. The inventions room has things you've never seen before. Spice grinders shaped like birds, collapsible herb drums, a kind of origami spice pouch designed to bloom open when dropped in soup. You want one. You want 10. And the mistakes room? Pure gold. There's accidental sweet mustard paste that turned into a popular dessert. Dueling cumin cakes made by 2 rival bakers who tried to sabotage each other's recipes and created something incredible instead. There's even a jar labeled Unknown, Do Not Open, sealed with wax and a small doodle of a panicking chef. You leave the museum buzzing. Back in the square, Fatima rejoins you. She's bought an old notebook, a spice ledger, she says, from a trader who vanished mid-route. The last entry simply reads, "Saw a shimmer, not alone." Charming. You decide to camp here for the night. The villagers welcome you like extended family. There's a communal meal, music played on strange gourd-like instruments, and a game involving blindfolds and guessing spices by scent. You win thanks to a rogue sprig of basil stuck behind your ear from earlier. The sky clears at dusk and stars blink alive one by one. You lie back, full and warm, listening to laughter and low song. Someone plucks a stringed instrument nearby. A child tells you she's going to grow up to be a cinnamon wizard. You believe her. Later, around the fire, the village elder tells a story. Long ago, he says, there was a spice so powerful it made people remember things they'd never lived. It wasn't addictive, it wasn't dangerous, but it made you feel like you belonged to the world, all of it, all at once. People called it root spice, but no one could ever agree what it actually looked like. Some said it grew in salt flats. Others said it was harvested under moonlight from trees that bled sap the color of rust. Eventually, the story says, it vanished. Or maybe it never existed. But the elder leans close and says, "We all carry the root in us. Some just forget how to taste it." You go to sleep thinking about that. In the quiet hours of the night, when even the wind has taken a break, you dream of walking, not through time, not through space, but through memory, through scent. You pass your grandmother's kitchen, a street stall in a city you've never been to,
the base of a cedar tree after rain, a tent filled with turmeric and quiet singing. You dream of places you've never been, and yet you know them. You dream of spices that don't exist, but should. You wake before dawn, heart full, hands warm, and eyes stinging just slightly. And the journey continues. Morning arrives like a whispered secret, cool and gentle, with the kind of light that doesn't quite know how to be day yet. The village stirs slowly. You hear the rustle of fabric, the soft sweep of brooms on stone, a pot clinking softly as someone prepares chai with too many cardamom pods, but you're not complaining. Fatima sits beside you, her notebook open, a new spiral drawn carefully in one corner. "This leg," she says, not looking up, "is older than anything we've walked." You stretch, bones cracking like tired firewood, and glance at the horizon. The trail ahead isn't carved or paved or even well-trodden. It just exists, a faint indentation in grass, a thread in the earth, only visible if you know to look for it. This was once the original footpath, before maps, before camels, before people even thought to call it a route. And so, you follow it. It begins quietly. Ferns brush your legs, trees stand tall and watchful. Birds above argue over something trivial and eternal. You feel like a guest here, not an intruder, just someone briefly allowed to pass. You pause at a wide clearing where the air feels thick with memory. Fatima tells you this was once a trading circle, not a market exactly, but a place where traders stopped, laid out their goods, and waited. No haggling, no signs. You simply sat and waited. If someone wanted to trade, they did. If not, they shared food and stories instead. Not every transaction needs silver. There's an old wooden post still standing, carved with hand symbols, open palms, linked thumbs, a spiral. Someone left a pouch at its base. You peek inside. Dried orange peel, 2 black peppercorns, and a tiny polished shell. An offering. You don't take it. You leave behind a pinch of salt and a mint leaf. It feels right. Later, you come upon the ruins of a tiny settlement, more suggestion than structure now. A wall here, a collapsed arch there. But even faded, you feel its heartbeat. This was a spice school. You laugh, but Fatima nods. Real thing. They trained apprentices. Identification, harvesting, preparation, preservation, trade laws, and storytelling. You imagine a nervous 12-year-old botching a turmeric toast, or an exam where you had to identify 50 different seeds blindfolded. Inside one of the crumbled buildings, someone has left a line of spice jars, filled with local herbs, balanced carefully on a beam of stone. Each one labeled in beautiful calligraphic script, not in modern terms, but in stories. Good night leaf, used to lull stubborn babies. River root, found only near fog at sunrise. Suncry pod, smells like orange but burns like shame. Historians still argue whether these poetic names were practical or mystical, but what you feel isn't debate, it's wonder. You walk on, the terrain slowly shifting again. The soil reddens, the air grows warmer, drier. The trees become shrubs, then thorns. The coast is approaching. You spot it first as a scent, salt, kelp, something sharp like citrus but mixed with smoke. Then the sound, gulls, faint but distinct. And finally, a shimmer on the horizon, the sea. It looks like a mirror someone breathed on, hazy, dreamlike. Ships in the distance bob like toys in a bath. This stretch of the route was once treacherous, not because of pirates, though there were plenty, but because of deals. Risky, high stakes, everything on the line exchanges. The closer you got to the port, the more valuable your cargo became, and the more tempting betrayal was. There's a ruined watchtower on a hill, half swallowed by sand and time. Inside, carved into the wall, are lists, names, weights, codes, and symbols, spirals, stars, even an eye. Fatima reads them slowly. Inventory or warnings? One name is etched repeatedly across different walls, not large, just present. Zaina. Fatima touches it gently. She ran the route twice, both directions. No caravan, no backup, just her and her knowledge. You stare. She made the spiral map, Fatima says. I'm sure of it. You climb higher, just to feel the wind, just to see it all. From the top, the sea looks endless. The land behind you stretches like a sleeping creature, folds and ridges and scars. You can almost trace the path you took, one long ribbon tied across the world. And then you descend. The final path is stone, actual carved flagstones, etched and grooved by countless feet and hooves. They lead down toward the port city, the final stop on the old spice trail. You feel strange, not sad, not excited, just full, like a meal you forgot was still happening. The city greets you with noise. Vendors shout, bells ring, someone is selling roasted chickpeas with smoked salt. Another offers saffron lemonade with just enough kick to change your afternoon. Ships groan at dock, their sails striped and flapping like the wings of giant birds. You find a quiet corner of the spice market and just watch for a while. Spice here is no longer mysterious. It's infrastructure, economy, identity. Kids carry parcels of cinnamon wrapped in old paper. Merchants argue over paprika grades. An old man tells you he once traded pepper for a boat and regrets nothing. And yet, still, the spiral shows up. On crates, on cloth, even on a carved step at the entrance to the docks. Fatima finds a small, tucked-away stall with hand-painted scrolls. She buys one. You ask what it is. Zaina's last journal, she says. A copy. The real one's in a temple vault somewhere. You sit down on the dock, feet dangling over the water. The journey's end isn't a moment, it's a slow exhale. You pass around sweet dates rolled in crushed fennel. You watch a camel try to bite a pelican. You let yourself smile without thinking about where you're going next. A young boy approaches with a bundle of dried herbs. For your dreams, he says. You ask what they are. He shrugs. Everything. You take them. As the sun dips behind the waves, the air fills with new smells. Grilled fish, crushed coriander, warm bread. The tide rolls in, steady as time, and the sails on the ships shift like lazy wings. Fatima leans on your shoulder. We'll go back someday, she says, or forward, or sideways. There's always another road. You nod. And, under the rustle of sails and the soft laughter of strangers, you hear it again. The whisper, the spiral, still turning, still calling. The next morning, you wake with a kind of softness in your bones, like your body knows something has completed itself. The port city hums with activity even before the sun's fully stretched above the sea. But the noise doesn't jar you anymore. You've adjusted to the rhythm. You are, oddly enough, a little bit spice now yourself, infused, carried, steeped. You help Fatima pack. There's not much to bring back. The journey took more than it left behind, and you're oddly okay with that. One last walk before you leave. You wander through a quieter part of the city. Older buildings, shutters painted in sea-worn pastels, narrow alleys with canopies strung between walls like sunburnt hammocks. There's a courtyard ahead, and a man is sweeping it with the kind of patience that only comes from decades of repetition. He nods when you pass, but doesn't speak. There's nothing urgent left to say. Fatima tells you this courtyard once held a spice council. Not official, not noble, just a place where traders gathered after long journeys. They would swap stories, settle arguments, or sometimes sit in silence together, too tired to pretend they weren't strangers. There's a bench made of petrified wood. You sit on it. A cat appears, stares at you as if evaluating your soul, and curls up under your foot like you passed some invisible test. You breathe in. The smells of the city are no longer overwhelming. They're layered now, decipherable. Salt, clove, dust, citrus, fish scales, ink. You've learned to read air. From a small stall, you buy one last spice pouch. Inside, crushed anise, shaved nutmeg, and something labeled simply as memory bark. You don't ask. You just smile and tuck it away. Later, at the docks, you watch the ships being loaded. Not just spices, though plenty of those, but also fabric, scrolls, glass beads, small carvings, dried flowers tied in pairs. Trade was never just about goods. It was about flavor, color, presence. The spiral meant many things to many people, but at its heart, it meant return. Not to the same place, not in the same way, but in the sense that the journey brings you back to yourself, full circle. Fatima walks with you to the edge of the dock. She isn't boarding. This part of the spiral is hers. You're the one drifting now. She gives you a tiny cloth-bound book, blank pages, just one spiral drawn on the first leaf. Start your own, she says. Then she vanishes into the crowd, with Soggy in tow, who turns around one last time and honks goodbye like a broken trumpet. The boat rocks gently as you climb aboard. The crew moves around you like practiced ghosts. You find a spot near the bow, settle in, and let the waves carry you forward. And as the shore pulls away, you feel it. The echo of footsteps on ancient stone, the scent of basil in a desert storm, the taste of salt clinging to dates. The spiral turns again. The quiet hum of the sea soothes your thoughts, and your eyes begin to close, not out of fatigue, but satisfaction. And now, as the wind softens and the sky deepens, we drift gently into the wind down.
Let your body settle now. Feel the cool hush of sea air brushing across your face, gentle and even, as if the world itself is exhaling. You've walked through centuries tonight, through jungle paths and market squares, through deserts that once whispered names in the wind. You've listened to the hiss of spices being roasted, the clink of glass jars filled with sunlight and memory, the quiet conversations between people who never needed to speak the same language. Let it all linger a while longer. Breathe in slowly. Let your lungs remember cardamom, basil, rain on dust. Exhale just as slowly and release the weight of the journey. Your feet are tired, sure, but not sore, just aware. They've learned the shape of the world beneath them. Every pebble, every flagstone, every curious twist of the path. They've walked not just across lands, but through stories. And now, your ship drifts steadily across the dark velvet water. The stars above you blink quietly, old and kind, like they've watched every trader, every dreamer, every sleepy traveler who's come this way before. Let their light guide your breath. Slow, soft, steady. The spiral turns behind your eyelids now, not as a road, but a lullaby. A quiet, circling rhythm that leads you not forward or backward, but inward. You're safe. You're held. You're home in a way you didn't know you needed to be. And if, as you slip deeper into sleep, you dream of strange spices or long-forgotten cities or camels with deeply questionable attitudes, well, that's just the journey continuing. Some roads never end. Some spirals never stop turning. Sweet dreams, traveler.